I'm very delighted to have here and to be able to have him come to the podium now, the Leader of the Opposition, Leader of the Ontario PCs, Patrick Brown.
Well, it's a pleasure to join you here today with Mayor John Tory. We had a great discussion on shared priorities, including our commitment to make life more affordable in Toronto and across the province. From our discussions, it's clear that Premier Wynne and the Liberals have taken Toronto for granted for far too long. We saw this result last year. We had the Scarborough-Rouge River by-election, a riding that has been a Liberal fortress for decades since its creation, and they lost. Last week's budget is yet another reminder that Premier Wynne has turned their back on Ontario taxpayers, Toronto taxpayers, the city, and the mayor. Toronto was my second home. I actually grew up at St. Clair and Bathurst, went to school in the city of Toronto. I care greatly about Toronto. In many respects, it's my second home, although I reside in Simcoe North. Now that I'm in the legislature, I'm back in this great city of Toronto. So when I talk about Toronto, it's not just as leader of the Ontario PC Party, it's as a resident of the city who cares deeply about the city of Toronto and its future. Toronto deserves a premier that will stand up for the city, and the mayor deserves a partner he can trust to fulfill commitments from the province to the city of Toronto. I am committed to being that partner. That is why today the Ontario PCs are announcing measures that will help Toronto families pay less and get ahead. First, we've heard from Mayor John Tory about the people who are evicted from Toronto Community Housing Corporation for committing serious crimes, jailed, and when released, reapply for community housing. Violent individuals can be considered disadvantaged and be moved to the top of the waiting list, taking priority over vulnerable families who have been waiting for years to access community housing. So in many respects, you have a waiting list of 82,000 families, and then you have convicted criminals jumping the queue. In order to stop this, you need provincial approval, which the Liberal government has refused to give. This, frankly, is outrageous. It's time to put vulnerable and law-abiding Toronto residents in community housing ahead of criminals. An Ontario PC government would allow the city to block violent criminals for reapplying to live in community housing. We will be introducing a private member's bill to this effect to allow the Liberal government to vote on this important issue, and we'll be introducing that private member's bill in the very near future. Second, I will work with the city to allow social housing to purchase natural gas at lower rates, something Premier Wynne has refused. Toronto could be saving $6.3 million per year simply by buying natural gas independently instead of being forced by the province to purchase it through a provincial bulk purchasing entity called the Housing Services Corporation. Despite this evidence and repeated calls by Mayor John Tory and PC housing critic Ernie Hardman, the government still refuses to allow municipalities to opt out of purchasing through Housing Services Corporation. We would allow Toronto to opt out of the Housing Services Corporation. Third, I know the mayor has worked to reduce red tape and streamline the development process to increase supply and affordability in the housing market, and I have stressed supply is a significant issue. Premier Wynne's recent housing plan failed to address this. Red tape still runs rampant, and in the provincial budget, they're actually predicting 6,500 less new builds. For example, when I talk about this red tape that is suffocating the building of new supply, the Provincial Strong Communities Act increased municipal review times for planning applications, delaying the building of new housing supply. The review time for amendments and approvals have doubled. For zoning, it's gone up 25%, and for consent applications, 33%. They have delayed the planning process left, right, and centre. The Ontario PCs will work with Mayor Tory to reduce red tape and streamline processes in the housing market where provincial approval may be necessary. Next, we need to keep Toronto moving, and I know how important the Scarborough subway is to Mayor Tory and the people of Toronto. It's been voted on, I understand, 9 times here. The Ontario PC Party, and by the way, 9 times every time it's been supported. I think every single Scarborough politician, save one, at every level supports the Scarborough subway. The Ontario PC Party unequivocally supports the Scarborough subway. The people of Scarborough have watched as the Liberal government sat on its hands for 14 years while Scarborough's transit needs were ignored. The government only supported the project when it was politically convenient during the 2013 Scarborough-Guildwood by-election, and then they said they were going to get shovels into the ground. But talk is cheap. The people want to see action. A PC government would ensure shovels actually get into the ground for the Scarborough subway. We also want to see Smart Track built. Smart Track is not just connecting people to employment in Toronto, it also connects areas throughout the GTA by using underutilized rail corridors. An Ontario PC government would instruct Metrolinx to treat this project as a priority and direct Metrolinx to make Smart Track fares uniform with TTC fares. That's important. The Smart Track fares need to be uniform with the TTC fares. In addition, Premier Wynne and her government, including Metrolinx, must personally intervene to ensure Bombardier delivers their vehicles on time and on budget for the Eglinton Crosstown. Metrolinx and their government's oversight over key infrastructure and transit projects has been abysmal. We saw that in the Auditor General's report. Premier Wynne needs to stop passing the buck to Metrolinx and personally ensure Bombardier delivers for the largest transit project currently underway in Canada. And finally, as elected leaders, it is our responsibility to work together. That is why we are announcing regular meetings between myself and Mayor Tory to discuss shared priorities, as well as formalize already occurring meetings at the staff level. Today, I want to make it clear that unlike Premier Wynne and her Liberals, we are not taking any part of the City of Toronto for granted. Toronto needs a partner they can trust and rely on who honors commitments that have been made by the province. The Ontario PC Party wants to be that partner and assure Toronto families who work hard, pay less, and get ahead in life. We will fight for the City of Toronto, and we will be cheering on the Toronto Raptors. I wish I could still be cheering on the Toronto Maple Leafs, but thank you so much for coming here today, and thank you for this opportunity.